Selling 3D assets is becoming problematic. It's extremely lucrative, with no overhead and infinite supply, which is why every day more assets are created. But they could be putting Blender in danger and destroying the creativity of 3D artists. That's a bold claim. So don't just take my word for it, because I have proof. Today we'll explore why assets are problematic, why they're endangering Blender more than other programs, and is this something you should even be worried about? This video is sponsored by Skillshare, but more about them later. To start, why is asset usage even problematic at all? The first reason is we might be committing fraud. Seriously. If you look at the terms of fair use on the official USCO site, there are tons of people unknowingly using assets illegally, but we'll get back to that in a minute, because that's not even the main reason asset usage is so problematic. The biggest reason is that they make you worse as an artist. How? By obliterating your learning curve. This happened to me. I started using Blender in 2021, not long ago, and it was super fun. I had the freedom to create anything I could imagine. I progressed rapidly for about a year and a half. Then I discovered BlenderKit. If you don't know, it's an add-on with 13,000 high-quality assets on their free plan alone. So I was like, this is great, I have all these free assets. But what ended up happening was not great at all. Instead of improving my art, I stopped making it altogether. If I wanted to make something cool, I could just pull assets from their library. It would be much easier, 3 clicks instead of 3 hours, and it would look better, but it wasn't mine. I didn't add anything other than just assembling the assets. This did 2 things. Firstly, it wasn't fun. I didn't feel fulfilled after making a project, so I didn't make many of them. Secondly, I stagnated as an artist. I didn't really improve much, which was also demotivating. I still use BlenderKit, but not like I used to. After a couple months, I just got tired of assembling assets, so I stopped. And I developed a system for how and when to use them that has really helped me in solving this dilemma. But I said earlier that some forms of asset usage are illegal. Take a look at this render. This was a render I made as B-roll to this YouTube video about a year and a half ago. The buildings, helicopter, and robot are all 3D assets from either Kitbash 3D or BlenderKit. As we go through what makes a video illegal, I want you to be the judge. Is this video fraudulent? According to the US Copyright Office of Fair Use Index, there are 4 different criteria that need to be met to use copyrighted material. Notice the key phrase, copyrighted material. That's going to be important for your verdict. Number 1, are you making money? Number 2, are you being transformative? Number 3, what percentage of your result is copyrighted material? Number 4, does your work affect the value of the original creator? Okay. So what is your verdict? Did I commit fraud? Let's do a quick analysis. First, did I make money from that clip? The answer is yes, but not when the video was uploaded. Since my channel has been monetized, I have made $1.09 from that video. I'm not a lawyer and I couldn't find a reputable source to tell me where that places this video since it was non-profit to start with, but I'm just going to say it was monetized. Second, was it transformative? From my research, this seems to be the most important category, and often it just comes down to this. And to decide if that video was transformative, we first need to define it in more precise terms. In a 2007 case, Perfect 10 v. Amazon, the court stated that a work was transformative if the new work does not merely supersede the objects of the original creator, but rather add something new with a further purpose or different character, altering the first with new expression, meaning, or message. In summary, you need to add something new. So the clip I made would definitely be considered transformative. Adding lighting, animation, volumetrics, and rendering it out as a video would classify this as transformative, and that helps it to fall under fair use. Third, what percentage of the clip is copyrighted material? There is no exact formula for what percentage is okay to use, but the less the better. For this render, the helicopter and the robot are from BlenderKit and the buildings are from Kitbash 3D. After analyzing the video, I decided that roughly 90% is copyrighted material, which means that this is less likely to fall under fair use. Fourth, does this shot affect the value of the original creators? This is an easy one. The answer is no. This render in no way harms or competes with the original creators. It's not like I'm reselling the assets or competing with them in any way. So based on all of this evidence, why did I say that this render was legal? Am I just biased? Remember, I told you that the key phrase is copyrighted material. Well, none of the assets I used had copyright restrictions on them. So why did we just go through all that legal precedent? Because if you're an ethical artist who is trying to follow best practice and not steal other people's work, it's best to follow these rules all the time. I personally believe that the shot would be legal even if it was using copyrighted material, because it was transformative and it doesn't interfere with the original creator. But if you're ever in doubt, always get permission and give credit. Okay, so that's why asset usage is problematic, because they hinder your development and many people use them unethically. So why is this such a problem for Blender? Wouldn't this affect all 3D programs equally? Well, it does, but Blender is in a unique position. To understand why, I want you to look at these two graphs. What do you notice about them? They're pretty similar, right? Not identical, but they both have huge spikes at the beginning of 2022. Yet these two graphs don't give you the full picture. If we look broader at the most popular 3D packages from 2004 till present day, you'll see that Blender begins to overtake the other programs in the beginning of 2018. And then it has a massive spike starting in December of 2021. Now let's compare this to the graph of 3D asset providers. There is the same massive spike in December of 2021 across all 4 asset sides. Now you could say that the increase is just because of the popularity of 3D in general increasing, and that Blender users don't use a higher percentage of assets than users of other programs. So I analyzed the data and broke it down by volume. This is the search traffic for Blender, for other programs, and for sites that allow you to download assets. You would expect to see the highest asset searches when interest in 3D programs is highest, from 2004 to 2007, but that's not what you see. Rather, the asset downloads are seemingly more influenced by the community interest in Blender more than anything else, which would lead to the conclusion that Blender's community uses more assets than users of other programs. But there is a massive problem with these graphs that I'm sure you've already noticed. This is a correlation. And if you've taken many science classes, you'll know that correlation does not equal causality, meaning that there could be external factors at play. And in this case, there most certainly are. For instance, many of the asset providers listed in this example were not established until 2012, well after the high point for these other 3D programs. The list of issues goes on, which means that this data alone is not enough to answer why Blender is being more affected than other programs. But it is a first step. To prove why Blender is more affected than other programs, I want you to put yourself in the shoes of a veteran 3D artist. You are the CEO of a visual effects company that currently employs 100 people, and your company has been in business for 20 years. During those 20 years, you've seen Blender explode in popularity, and many of your new hires use Blender. But you understand something important about the Blender community. Proportionally, there are less Blender users employed in a professional capacity than many other industry-grade programs, which makes logical sense when you consider that many Blender users are just hobbyists who have no desire to pursue a career in 3D. Whereas if you are actively spending money on an Autodesk subscription, you are more likely to be making money if for no other reason than to justify the cost. Based on this logic, we can say that proportionally, Blender has less professionals employed than other industry-grade programs. Not to say that there are not talented Blender users, there absolutely are, but the community as a whole is somewhat diluted by hobbyists, whereas the price of other programs filters out many casual users. And there's nothing wrong with being a hobbyist. That's how most people start. But casual users are the demographic who is most likely to use assets. It's an easy way to get great results, and if you have no desire to go pro, then many of the downsides, like a slower learning curve, are mitigated. This also would explain the correlation between the two graphs. The asset downloads would closely follow Blender's popularity, because more Blender hobbyists are using assets than the community of other programs. But there is a problem with this, because pros use assets too. They can be a great tool that allows you to create way faster. Throughout this whole video, I've been bashing 3D assets, but to be a true professional, you need to understand how to use them responsibly. Once you get a job in a studio, or are stretched thin between multiple clients, creating every small detail in your renders yourself is not an option. So how do we do that? How do we use assets while eliminating their downsides? Well, here's my system. First, we need to follow USCO guidelines. Don't steal other people's content. If it's copyrighted, ask permission first and give credit. Second, I would avoid using assets in any form other than textures in your first year or two. If you start out using every available asset to try and make the best renders, you'll lose many of the foundational principles of 3D and be lost later on. It will completely obliterate your learning curve and demotivate you. Third, only use assets you can create yourself. If you can make it, then you're saving time. But if you're using it as a crutch, then you're robbing yourself of improvement. There are some obvious exceptions, but try to stick to it. In the long run, it'll be better off. The main reason I keep coming back to why asset usage is so problematic is it robs you of the opportunity to learn. That's what it comes down to, and that's why they can be so damaging when used improperly. But there is a way to expedite the learning process. That's where today's sponsor, Skillshare, comes in. Skillshare is an online learning community that allows you to access well-structured classes by industry professionals. I've always wanted to learn Adobe After Effects to be able to make a larger variety of animations, but it was really daunting. Recently, I've been going through Hongshu Go's class on After Effects that teaches everything about 2D animation. And having a well-structured class makes everything way faster than bouncing from random video to video on other platforms. Every lesson builds on the last. Skillshare is the largest online learning community with thousands of classes that range from film and illustration to productivity and journalism. Even if you're only interested in Blender content, there are over 700 classes that span every skill level. I'm sure you've heard all that, but they also have learning paths, which are lists of classes that help you develop your career and break into the industry. For instance, Derek Elliott has a learning path with almost 5 hours of content that takes you from a complete beginner to a competent product animator. So if you're serious about learning Blender or any other creative skill, the first 500 people to use my link in the description will get an entire month free to be able to watch as many classes as you want. Thank you, Skillshare, for sponsoring today's video, and thank you for watching.